that she did it with a bud, and slicing the side. I mean, so cool. She was real successful. Oh, can I come give you a hand? You know? And I can still lean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you know I am senior.
Yes,
All right, so last time I shook up a few people because I was talking, I put up a slide and it was like, when do you prune fruit trees? And because most of what we have today is going to be fruit trees, we'll address that right now. It used to be done, still is done in commercial orchards at dormant. So dormant means winter, trees haven't started growing, and so you know that's great. And it was really good for the fruit growers because they could see what had to come out, and you know what? They're not doing anything in the winter time. There's nothing to do, so they have time to do it then. But it's actually not the best time to do it. In terms of how the tree grows, there are two other times that are better, and neither one of them is winter. So the first one is late spring, after the buds have broken and there's some growth. So at that point, oh, I should back up just a little bit. There's an illustration I always use that works well, that helps people understand this. When you have your trees, you know, most of you are not going to have 28,000 trees like we once had, so you don't have to worry about it. You know, for the trees that you have, then what happens in the fall is that for shade tree, fruit tree, whatever, the leaves are upsized and they drop to the ground. We don't think anything about it. But what's actually going on before that happens is that the nutrients that are in those leaves is stored in the trunk and in the roots. What happens when we prune during the winter is that we take a whole bunch of that wood off, and the following spring, all those nutrients that were saved, now, you know, some of it has a place to go, but there's an excess of nutrients that don't have any place to go anymore. You understand that picture? Mm-hmm. Which is why, if you prune during dormancy, you get a huge growth response. You get a lot of sucker growth coming on, and you really want to avoid doing that because the suckers are weak-witted because they grow so quickly and the cell walls are not strong. Mm-hmm. And also, they don't produce any fruit. It's vegetative growth. It's not producing any fruit. So what do? We come along and we nip it all off again. And then we get to do it again next year. Every year that we're pruning during dormancy, we get a lot of regrowth like that, and we end up having to take it off again. So taking a look at how the tree grows, the plant physiology, then there is a better way to do it, not doing it in the winter. What you do is you wait until the buds have opened up, there's some extension growth, and then you go in and prune. And the reason why you do this is because those nutrients that were stored have now, a lot of them have already been used. And what's left is not going to cause a huge growth response. So at that point, yes, you can't quite see as well when the plant has the foliage on it as you can when it's dormant, but you're not going to get the growth response, which means that you may not have to prune next year if you keep doing it this year. There will just be some extension growth, but it's not going to have that ferocious, desire to grow like gangbusters that you have when you do dormant pruning. Now, there are some times when dormant pruning is advantageous. And today, we're going to be looking at young fruit trees. And unlike what a lot of you would want to do in your backyards, you want them to keep fairly small. But in this case, because this is a public food forest and they want to get this stuff growing because it is so hot here, they want to get some shade out of these trees. So they want them to grow faster than what you might want them to do at home. So we are actually going to be pruning them now, even though I would normally say in your backyard you don't want to do that. Okay? Because we want them to grow this year. We want them to get bigger so that they can get the shade they need so that they're not having to water, 3 or 4 times a day. So anyway, this is why we're doing it today. The other time to prune, again, thinking of my illustration where the leaves are storing their nutrients for the winter, when you prune in late summer, your plant has grown, your tree has grown, you've got new growth, and you know when it first grows, it's really kind of, you know, you can whip it around, you can break it off really easily, but during the course of the summer, it lignifies, it gets woody. And the bud on the end also hardens. When that bud is hard, that means that it is now ready for winter. It's unlikely that the tree is going to grow more before we get into cold weather. If it did grow, then you know that growth in the fall probably wouldn't make it through the winter. So you want to do it at this time. And you know, every year is different. Sometimes we have an early spring, and in summer is hot, trees really mature quickly, so you might be pruning with some of your varieties at the end of July. It's a little cooler in the spring, or you know, then it might be middle of August, or like last year. You know how those leaves didn't turn color? Yep. And they hung on and they hung on because we had that warm open fall. They were not hardening off until well into September. So at that point, you go in and you do your pruning. So like what I say, it's not a date, it's a stage. So you're looking for that bud, the terminal bud or the apical bud, whatever you want to call it, to be hardened. So at that point you can do your pruning. Now, when you go into fall, because at this point, this is before the leaves have dropped, right? So the leaves, when they do drop, before they drop, are going to be storing nutrients equal to the size of the tree. I see a light went on. So now what happens is that the nutrients that are stored in the trunk and in the roots is equal to the size of the tree next spring. Are you following me here? So there is not a huge growth response. There is not an excess of nutrients that is then going to give you all kinds of growth. So this is a major plus. So you can prune in late spring or in summer. We call it summer pruning, but you know, it really depends on when that wood is hardened off. Those are your times. And you know what's really nice about it? You can probably do it in shorts instead of your winter coat and winter boots and hat and everything else like you did when you had to do dormant pruning. So it's much nicer to do it then. And it just makes more sense physiologically on that being the timing in terms of how you do it. And because you don't have a lot of trees, and hopefully you do have some time in spring or in summer to do this, then you don't have to worry about doing it in the winter. Now, if you have any big limbs to cut off, it could be that while the tree is dormant, it's a lot easier to go, oh, you know, that one should come out because there's a lot of shading on this down here, or this one should come out. It could be a lot harder to see when they got leaves. So either mark them with flagging tape or spray it with a spray paint, which is really easy, so that when you do your pruning, you know which one it was that you wanted to take out. Because the best time to take out a limb or a larger branch with any of your pruning, the best time to prune is when the cambium layer, which is that green layer right under the bark, is in active growth. It's in active growth in spring and in fall. So those are your best times to take out limbs, which fits in perfectly with when you want to cut out everything else. Okay? So just mark it if you have to, but you know, if you can see what you're doing, remember what you want to have. If you could look down on it, you want to have your central trunk and then have your branches coming out like the spokes of a wheel, so that they're evenly spaced around, so you can get a ladder into it or whatever, so you can do your picking. Because you don't want to have something that is going to be so hard to pick that nobody wants to do it. And you also want to bring your wood down to where you can do it either from the ground or from a short ladder, instead of having to do everything up a really high ladder. So we talked a bit about that last time. I'm not going to talk about that this time. I just wanted to talk about the timing, because the timing is important. Now, for those of you who were here last time, I talked about the 4 Ds of pruning. What are they? dead,
Damaged.
damaged,
Damaged and deranged.
diseased, and deranged. She remembered the best one. So anything, remember this, because if you do this with your pruning, you have covered most of your pruning with almost everything. The dead, diseased, and damaged, they can come out at any time. It doesn't matter if it's spring or if it's fall or anything in between. You don't want to set up a situation where disease or insects can come in. So dead, diseased, and damaged, anytime. And if you're pruning, then, and you haven't taken care of these, that's where you start. Then you take out deranged. And deranged is anything that's going the wrong direction, you know, down, up, 2 liters. You only want 1 liter. You know, it's like 2 liters at a committee. It never works well. So 1 liter, take out the other one. Crossing branches that are going into the middle of the tree. Because when you have that type of situation, you're creating shading, you're creating congestion, which then causes light, you know, more shading than you want. It causes poor air circulation, so you don't get the venting. And if you don't get the sunlight and the venting, then you have more issues with fungal disease. Also, when you're growing fruit, if you get too much shading in the middle, the fruit is going to be a lower quality, or the buds might die. So the old central or the old open center trees that look like the big gnarled umbrellas, those were done with everything, you know, trained up to 4 major limbs, and then it got too high. They didn't keep it down where it should be. So what happened is that all that wood that's up here shades what's underneath, and you lose those buds in there. So they die out. And then all your fruit is on the outside of the tree, and you have to do everything from a ladder. So it's a pain. Now, an open center type tree, which has the, you know, not a central leader, like I gave you the handout for the central leader because it makes a lot of sense. It's the easiest way to keep the limbs on a fruit tree in balance with one another, because the vent for the growth wants to go up. And we have to make sure that the limbs that are down here are getting their fair share, because if they don't, they will die out. And we'll get what happened with the big open center trees. That's what we're trying to avoid. So that's why you want to make sure that, you know, everything is in balance, and it's explained on the back and in the handout how that works. But if you're growing peaches or cherries even, any of the members of the prunus family, so we're talking here stone fruits, if you want to grow them as an open center without having the central leader and then side limbs going up the tree, and you just want to have the lower ones, you know, maybe 4 of them or 5 of them going around, that's perfectly okay. But you have to keep everything growing relative to each other, because if you don't, you know, you're going to get a lot of hairiness, which is still going to produce some shading. And then the beauty of using the open center, especially for peaches, is that it's letting in so much light. And you want that light because it's going to increase the sugar levels, which is going to make the taste better and keep better. For peaches, that's not maybe so important, but it is nice for apples if they keep it longer. You know, you don't want them shriveling up in a week. So anyway, you know, there are different systems you could use, but it's about keeping everything balanced. And if you take the instructions for the Central Leader program and follow that initially for all your fruit trees, then if you have a peach or a cherry and you want to keep the wood down lower where you can get at it, then you take out your Central Leader and just keep that lower roar. Does that make sense? Okay. And same instructions, but you're taking out that middle piece. But you can use the Central Leader system for every fruit tree.
Marion,
Yes.
comment.
Yes.
If you do have
Come
an
over
open,
here.
if you do have an open centered tree, then treat each of your 4 limbs or 5 limbs as a center leader. Use the principles of center leader on each one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yes.
So if you were to take out your center leader,
Uh-huh.
what time of year would be best
Well, the best time, that's a heavy limb.
Heavy limbs. So
Yeah, so your best time is going to be in the late spring
Late spring.
or in early fall,
Okay.
when the cambium is in active growth. Okay. It all makes
Yeah,
sense
it
if you
does.
just kind of think it through. And that's why I say, you know, if you learn the 4Ds and you remember when the time is, you can take that information with you out into your garden and you can think it through and you'll figure out how to prune everything. So, yes.
I think that old timing, it had to do with shocking the tree. Is that just not a thing?
No.
Okay.
No,
I-
it really was about having the time to prune. Then,
Oh, okay.
You know,
well, I always heard it was because you would shock your tree if you did it when it was already growing. But so shocking a tree is not a thing.
no, if you got it when it was already growing, it's not going to shock. No, it just means that, you know, the nutrients are going to have a place to go. So there are some trees that you do not want to prune at dormant because they bleed really heavily. So regardless of whatever, you prune them during the summer when they're in full leaf. So maples and birches, things like that, you prune them in the summer because there has to be a place for those nutrients to go, or the tree is just going to be dripping the whole time. Now as humans, we've taken advantage of that and we tap maples and birches, and it's fine. You can do it over a period of years as long as you don't do too much of it. But if you are pruning your tree to the point where you are taking a lot of wood every year, you're going to damage it over a period of time if you're doing it when the tree is dripping, like when it's losing sap. So if you do it in late spring, when the buds have already expanded, they're grown, there's some green growth, at that point, then nutrients have already gone to those items, so a lot of the nutrients have been used up, and you're not going to have a whole lot of excess nutrients that have no place to go, which are then going to give you a growth response. Like there's a whole bigger explanation that when I've done fruit tree courses we get into, but unless you're really seriously into it, it can get really confusing. So that might be something that we do next year, you know, kind of pruning 201, you know, so that we get the next stage. But for this year, I thought this covered the basics and gets you to what you need to know in terms of what to prune and when. So your what is the 4Ds. And then we can fine tune it a little bit. And the reason why we're doing it now is because here we want to encourage growth so that we can get more growth this year so these trees can then start to produce more shade. Because they want them to produce fruit, but they also need them to be bigger so that it's not so incredibly hot here. Anything else you want to say? No? You okay so far? All right, any questions? Yes.
If I just finished pruning and they're fairly new trees, would it be good to wait when they're all full again, go back and prune a little bit more?
You can do that in the summer. I wouldn't do it right in the spring,
okay.
but let them do some growing and then take a look at them again when the terminal bud is hardened to see if there's anything that needs to come out. Because if you've done it now, you are going to get a growth response, right? Because you've done it while they're dormant. So you may have some you know, branches growing straight up, and so those can come out. So that next year you're not going to have that growth response, and it'll be, you know, it'll stay more the size that you're looking for.
Okay, thanks.
Okay? Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, so I have it like, I'm just thinking, if you have an old apple tree and you can actually see the shape of it, but then, like it hasn't been pruned or anything and it's been a long time, and it has so many little shoots, what are those called?
Suckers or water sprouts.
Like, yeah, they're just,
water sprouts.
yeah, they're really, really big. Now, and you only say to take out like a third.
Yeah, that's right. I
So-
didn't mention that.
Yeah.
Rule of thumb is a third each year, no more than a third.
Okay, so if
Yeah.
there is too much there, still don't take all of that out
No.
at once.
But there is a way that you can deal with that.
Okay.
What you can do is you've got all this vertical growth wanting to go
Yes,
somewhere,
yes.
right? So take out a third
Yeah.
and leave the stuff that's in the middle. So if you've got a lot of water sprouts coming up close to the center, leave them. Because they can become the vent for the growth. Just like in the central leader system, you're leaving the center to be the vent for the growth. So, you know, that's a way to deal with it. That should really slow down your tree.
Okay.
Would
Okay, good thing. So depending on what you grow, the reason why open center is good for peaches is because they produce their fruit on 1-year-old wood. So what grew last year is going to give you fruit this year. So I find them really easy to prune because if it fruited last year, it can come out. And then you can start cutting back because they tend to be really precocious and you get a lot of wood. If you get a lot of that new growth, some of it's going to have to come out anyway. But remember, no more than a third. Otherwise, you're going to get a rebound, you know, for the growth. But all of that is going to produce your fruit. So, you know, I don't want to cut off too much of it because you could have a pretty good crop with that. And it produces a crop every year. Now, sweet cherries also produce on 1-year-old wood. What was the other one? Some pears, but most pears are on 2 or 3-year-old wood. Apples are on, some produce on 2, most of them on 3-year-old wood. So when you're looking, you'll start, you know, what grew last year, that's 1-year-old wood. And then you'll see that there's a little ring where last year's bud was, and below that is 2-year-old wood. And then if it's long enough, there will be another ring and you'll have 3-year-old wood, okay? So as you go down, if it's an apple tree, you want to leave that 2- and 3-year-old wood because that's where your fruit spurs are. You don't want to be cutting all that out. So, and with your peaches, you don't want to be cutting out, and your sweet cherries, you don't want to be cutting out all that 1-year-old wood because you're going to be cutting out your
What
production.
about prune plums?
And prune plums are 2-year-old wood. So, yeah, you're making me yes, okay, prune plums are 2-year-old. So, but you know, cherries, I think it's an advantage to try and keep it to an open center because there is not a good, easily available dwarfing rootstock the way that there is for apples. You can get apples that are going to grow to 10 feet on a dwarfing rootstock. Others on a semi-dwarfing rootstock are going to grow 15 to 17. And then you get your standard root that's going to grow who knows how tall, you know, so 20, 30, whatever. You don't often find standard rootstocks. But if you want a tree to grow that tall, you bury the graft. So the graft, I'm going to show you a graft here. You bury it, and then the scion, the desired variety on the top, grows its own roots, and it will grow to whatever size it's genetically predisposed to grow to, which is going to be taller than that rootstock. Okay, so if you want a bigger tree, then you just bury the graft. But most people with our smaller backyards are looking for something that isn't going to grow huge. So make sure that when you do plant it, that you bury it with the rootstock, the knobby part, about 4 inches above soil level. If you do it too low, and so you're working with soil, you're adding mulch, anything like that, then the scion, that desired variety on the top, will send out roots, and you'll have lost the effect of the rootstock. Okay? Now, what was your question? Did I answer it or did I get the verdict?
Yeah, it was plums.
Okay.
Let's prune it up.
So let's get started. They planted quite a few fruit cocktails here. And you know, one thing that you have to know about fruit trees is that if you're doing a fruit cocktail, you cannot put an apple and a cherry together because they are genetically different. So everything that is on one of those trees would have to be all stone fruits, or they would have to be all apples or all pears. You can't mix them up. But in that,
You're talking about grafted trees?
I'm talking about, well, any tree that you
What's a
buy,
fruit cocktail?
yeah, is a fruit cocktail tree is where you have multiple varieties on one tree.
Okay.
Okay, so back in the day when we still had our garden center, we did not sell them for a particular reason. And that is that each particular variety, like each one of us, has our own rate of growth. And if you put varieties, even if they're all members of the Prunus family, you know, sure, they'll graft. They can grow for a while. But if one grows like crazy and another one is a really slow grower, guess what's going to happen? If you don't know how to keep them in balance, the guy who grows really well is going to take over And what you'll end up having is you'll have one variety, usually over a period of 10 years, and you know, we've watched them. Over a period of 10 years, you will lose most of them and end up with one. So my particular feeling on the subject, because they're expensive, is that go for the chase, get the variety you actually want, and grow one of them. And then if there's another one on there that you like, get the other one and grow it. But don't try growing it as a fruit cocktail, because unless you really know what you're doing when you're pruning, you're going to lose a few. And they are expensive. You know, fruit trees have got so much more expensive and in the last few years. And we used to bring them in bare roots so that we could sell them for as little as possible, as long as possible, but it gets to a point where they have to be potted up. Now, because garden centers can make more on them right from the get-go, a lot of them are selling them already potted because they can make more money right away. So if you're...
Sorry, were they donated, these ones, or why did they
no,
not?
they purchased them. What?
I don't know why.
What?
I think it was a matter of interest.
Yes. So, and you know...
And maybe they are getting better at figuring out which ones to graft together. Maybe.
Do you see this doubtful look?
Maybe it was an experiment.
Yeah, it's a skeptical
I
look.
know.
Yeah, they sound, well, I am quoting here. Who's the young fellow who owns Nikos?
Don't.
No, I was just going to say, he said, I heard him on a radio program, and he called them the best thing since sliced bread.
Okay.
They're not. But they do cost more. Garden centers make more money on them. You can edit that part. But you know what? They know I have said that. I am not saying anything that I wouldn't say to their face, because I feel that strongly about it, you know. And I even talked to the wholesaler who was selling them, and I said, why do you sell these things? Because they're so hard to keep in balance, you know. And I just gave him the explanation that I just said, and he says, oh yeah, but people like to play with them. And I'm going, okay, if that's how you sleep at night. So, you know, I mean,
When you buy them, do they say, you can play with this? They don't say that. Buyer beware.
yeah. So anyway, go for the chase and get the varieties that you actually want. So I'll get off my soapbox now, and let's go over and look at the first trees. Depends on how big they are. If they're young trees, then yes, the root, like this, just make sure that you know, if your top is like this, take the root to about here, you know, at the rain, and go out like so. Plunge your shovel down in, and because the roots are not way far down, they're here.
Okay.
So, you know, dig it down, leave it like that for a few weeks to give some of the roots a chance to grow in a little bit, and then get some help, get under there, put it onto a tarp, and move it to where you want to go.
Yeah.
And they tend to grow very quickly. They also tend to die back a lot in the winter. So I would not want to prune this until the buds are breaking, so I can see what has died and if anything has to come out. And I would say that that's true for the ornamental elders as well as the fruiting elders, because they do tend to have a lot of dieback in them, but they grow like crazy. So they catch up really quickly. You don't have to worry about that.
Would that be the same as like the blueberries and the
No,
husband?
blueberries, no, they're tougher. You don't get the dieback with them.
Oh, okay.
So, but with them, I would wait until they're in leaf before I prune them, because you don't want to have a huge growth response. But what you're doing with your shrubs is you take out the 4Ds, okay? Always the 4Ds, and then up to a third, if you haven't taken out a third, by taking out the oldest wood. And you can tell the oldest wood because it'll be grayer, the bark will be a little bit thicker. And you don't just give them a bowl cut on the top. You take back, like if this were one right here, then I would take it right back to here. Or this one right here. Like I would take it right back to the ground or to the trunk. And what that does is it forces more growth from the base so that you'll have new growth coming up. And then over a period of 3 years, with that new growth and you taking out the old stuff, you completely rejuvenate the plant. So nothing is older than 3 years old. And that's where your optimum fruiting is. So that works for all of the small fruiting, all the small fruits except for raspberries, blackberries. Like the cane fruit is a little bit different, and there are some here, so we'll talk about there. But all of the small fruit, you're taking out up to a third. Always, once you've taken care of the 4 Ds, you're looking at the oldest wood, okay? And right down to the base. You're looking at the oldest wood.
What is this?
That is an elder, a sambucus. And this is a fruiting elder. And so, you know, they want it to grow like crazy, but they die back a lot in the winter years. So I don't want to prune it until I know which buds are alive and which aren't, in case I'm pruning out something that's actually alive. Yeah. Okay?
So elderberry, I don't know if you all know, but it will grow from the base.
Yes.
Growth coming.
Yep.
You will get a lot of shoots.
Oh, look
coming
at
out.
them already. You see them all coming?
You can, when you are pruning it, you can plant just the single cutting.
Oh, a cutting. Yeah.
And just stick it in the ground and it will literally grow roots. So elderberry, to make elderberry syrup, so a highly medicinal plant, well worth growing. Elderberry grove, they've got so many and they just cut them like a couple of inches off the ground every year and it just rejuvenates the entire thing. But if you're looking to make a tree out of it, that will be different pruning required.
Yeah. And I've done that, but you know, they do still tend to die back a lot. The central leader is usually good, but there would be a lot of dieback every year. So I'd have something that looked more like a bunch of spokes growing from the trunk, but it would always grow like crazy. And if you want to look, you know, if you're wanting to do this and you can't find any of the named varieties, the fruiting varieties that like Adams and things like that, if you use the Niagara, Sambucus nigra varieties, it's a European type of elder, has very good fruit, and that you can use for making your syrups and stuff. Okay? Did you want to say something about this fruit tree right here, James?
I want to just say as well, your decorative shrubs should be pruned the same, so that 3 years you have.
Oh yeah,
have new
all of your shrubs. Not
Instead
just your
of
fruiting
a
shrubs,
pole
also your
cut
decorative one.
with all this dead wood in it.
Yeah, we go for walks around town and we get so annoyed at what goes for pruning around here. And
On the walk over, I was so tempted to prune it.
Yeah, you get to carry it on your pruners, right?
yeah. Oh, I know, they're getting paid to do that. Oh, we got a little beam, we got a beam. Woohoo!
He's in there working.
Oh yeah.
Like the first one.
This very ugly thing is artichoke,
Yes.
but it's very phenomenal.
Oh yeah. And you know what else artichoke is great for? You know, if the container gardens, if you like doing container gardens, ornamental ones, and you've got the idea of the thriller, you know, your central point, and then your filler and your spillers, it makes an awesome thriller because it gets these big silver leaves, and then if it comes into fruit, it's absolutely beautiful. I've done it many times, and you don't have to pay for really strong ornamentals. They're not as expensive usually as those other ones, so give that one a try because it's really nice and it loves the heat. So if you've got a pot in full sun, it's a good choice.
And you can just leave it like that. You don't have to do anything.
Oh,
Well,
that
that
looks
looks really
pretty
ugly.
dead.
We should have probably cut it back.
Oh, okay.
So are blackberry bushes sort of the same like those elderberry
No,
bushes?
blackberry bushes are a vine. They're a cane type, right? And we've got some raspberries down there, right, Melanie?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So we will be taking a look at that and talk about that when we get that far.
Okay.
Okay.
We
So,
kind of forgot about them last year because they were on the other side of the parking lot. So we'll see
okay.
if they come back.
Okay.
Not particularly.
So this is a combo tree, and these are all peaches. nectarine and a frost peach. Oh, and it does have an apricot, but they're all stone fruit. Okay? So this is a true fruit salad in that there are a couple of different types of plants there. And if you are not aware of this, a nectarine is a fuzzless peach. It is not something different. They just put a whole lot of marketing in behind it so they could charge more money for it when they first developed it. So anyway, it is a peach. But this one, that one is really not pretty.
When it's in full foliage though, from afar it looks like a really cool like emu or something. Long neck
Just
and
what you
top.
want for a fruit tree. Okay. The emu tree.
Like a giraffe.
And it's got buds started already.
Oh yeah, but
Yeah.
this is because this is
Yes.
a prunus.
Yes.
So what grew last year is going to have fruit buds on it, and you
Okay.
can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see what else that grew last year? Up here.
Those second
Ah.
tubers.
Those.
And that grew up there because they cut it right there. So if you want branches, you will get branches within 8 inches of the cut,
Okay.
right? But you didn't get anything here. So
Because
if this fruit's up here, then this weighs down and the branch breaks off the tree.
yes.
Right.
Very, very weak crotch. Those are undesirable crotches. You want them coming out at that angle.
Remember I told you that if you've got a crotch angle and you put your finger in there and you can see light under it, that is a really poor crotch angle because they tend to break. And ice and snow can form in there, and alternate freezing and thawing will then break them open. So yeah, this tree is really a mess. And
So there was a lady that said she's pruned her trees already.
me,
Yes. If you've done any of these kind of cuts,
yeah,
what happens is the first branch below that cut, this one, generally grows the most vigorously. This one happens to do so. But the crotch angle is the tightest on that one. A little less tight, a little less tight. So on your trees, you have time to do this.
yeah,
When these are an inch long,
yeah,
the shoots go in and leave the first one. Break off at least 3, the next 3. That will bring you down to these. See how nice and flat those are?
yeah.
That will encourage those to grow nice and flat.
Mhm.
No weak crotches
Yeah.
and better tree.
Okay.
So you'd leave this one and break those 3 off.
Well, on
Yeah.
this one,
On
no.
this one, on this one,
Do you know
this
what's
one we
happening?
have got a problem with the growth. The diameter of the branches, this is your center leader. This is supposed to be
The heaviest.
the heaviest. See how this branch is sucking all the nutrients
Yep.
and it's killing this one. This is gonna die off. It's not gonna live another 2-3 years.
And once that one's gone, the one on the other side is going to have the same thing happen to it. So this is a really good demonstration on why fruit cocktail trees are not a great option.
Yeah, because you can't balance the growth on them really well. This we can try. You want to try to
Save it?
save it?
Yeah.
Okay.
What did Kelly
Don't
say?
be shocked. This may
Yeah. And
this
remember,
may
we're
or
trying
may
to
not
invigorate.
work.
And, yeah.
Yeah,
It
we're
may
trying
not.
to increase vigor. So
There we go.
There you go. There you go. A mere shadow itself.
wow.
Yes.
Hopefully
It'll go
this
straight.
now
Oh,
becomes
no.
the leader,
No,
right? And
Yeah.
flows bigger.
Because we're doing it
You're
while it's
gonna
still
get
winter.
you're gonna get a shoot coming out here.
Yeah.
And you're gonna get one here. Whoever is watching this garden, now me, don't allow any more than one shoot to come off these. Okay. On this one, watch for your branches. Actually, it should have come down further. That will come out this way.
Right, nice in the middle.
Yeah, nice in the middle. So let this one go. If this starts to compete with that one, just take it off, and you'll see that when they're this long. Okay. So
can
you
still
want
get some fruit off of it this year if it's
not now.
yeah.
Oh, another thing with the fruit, we want to invigorate this block. We do not want any of these fruit trees carrying fruit because one fruitlet
That seed,
amounts to that much shoot growth.
yeah. And look at
Okay,
this.
one fruitlet.
See all these fruit that would have been formed up here?
Yeah.
All of those seeds would have so much auxin in them. If you remember the last class, the auxins that are produced in the terminal bud and in the seeds then slow everything down below. Then just imagine,
Cause it
like
not
it,
to grow.
yeah, to
How
cause it
can
not.
you tell whether they're buds or leaves?
Skinny
On
butterflies.
Butterfly buds. So there's not a whole pile of fruit.
Yeah.
You're looking for butterfly buds.
Okay. So
Actually, the fruit bud which is in the middle.
these ones right here.
Probably got broke.
Those ones are the ones that.
Oh, there's some live ones.
So James, you want to-
So the middle one is a fruit bud, right here by my thumb.
That's
Right on top. The one in the middle.
This one.
No. There's three buds together. Right there, there's three buds together.
Middle one.
The one in the middle is fruit. The two outside big ones are leaves. So that's your fruit bud in the center. This is a leaf bud here. And that's another leaf bud there.
Still haven't understood which is the fruit bud.
The middle one.
That one, right there?
Yeah, there's three buds together. They're called butterfly buds.
And those are
This
fruit.
bud has three buds.
Oh. And those are fruit?
So
The
James,
middle one is fruit.
Oh, the middle one is fruit.
So those sure leaves on the side of it.
Yeah.
I got it now. I
Yeah,
got it.
and the two other ones.
Flowers are holding their breath.
You know, plants are pretty hardy.
I know.
that's true.
You know,
Unlikely.
And it's a good thing, right?
yes, it is. Very good thing. Okay, yeah, you were going to show us that.
Show them the bud.
Okay, so peaches have butterfly buds. This one actually has two fruit buds. You can see one here, one there, and there's two in the middle on this one.
Yeah, I can see
The two in the middle are fruit buds. This is a leaf bud, that's a leaf bud.
Okay.
So it blossoms, forms fruit on the middle one, and the two leaves supply nutrients to the fruit.
So these ones though are just leaves. They don't have.
Those
they're
are just
one.
leaves.
Oh, okay.
Some of them are leaves.
And you are beyond the last.
Right,
growth.
interesting.
Yes.
So this piece here with just the leaf on it
Yeah.
had fruit buds on it last year because this is 2-year-old wood. Peaches fruit on 1-year-old wood. On what grew last year. So the fruit is out here on the 1-year-old wood. Yeah, because you're cutting off on peaches, you're cutting off all your fruit.
And plums. I know. You know what? I messed up. I think on my trees. We got a peach tree. I have to out. I think we. But I was trying to go past that little rim.
Yeah. Yeah, and apples is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, they got the little.
You know, whether it's a new whip or whether it's a shot shoot or whatever.
You can get more.
What wood does apricot have fruit?
Pardon me?
How many years old is the wood?
One. Yeah. Most members of the Prunus family are on 1-year-old wood, but sour cherries and what else? Plums our 2-year-old wood. Yeah, the cream plum.
Is on
2-year-old wood.
2-year-old.
Yeah.
And the apricot is on 1-year-old.
On 1-year-old wood, yes. And sweet cherries are on 1-year-old wood. So it's sour cherries and plums that are on 2-year-old. And that should be in your handout from last time.
I was.
Oh, you weren't there last year? Okay, so Jane?
You'll get this.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a different way to cut?
With espalier, you definitely don't want to do dormant pruning. Definitely don't want to do dormant pruning because you want to really control the growth. So your best time for pruning an espalier is with summer pruning because you want to slow it down.
By summer,
You can do this one too.
midsummer.
They're young, so we've got another year.
Okay, so this is the Bartlett. Okay, we're already losing a couple. You see this? This is the Bartlett.
And the boss.
And the boss are not looking very happy. This is the... No, this is also a Bartlett, so there are 2 Bartletts on here. But, okay.
But this one isn't bad. At least the center leader is
Still strong.
still strong, which
Yeah.
is good.
And we can slow this one down.
Yeah, we can slow that one down quite nicely.
There.
This is too tight. Project.
The crotch is too tight. This one is kind of vigorous. It's almost at the, competing leader. But we can slow this one down by putting in a spreader, James.
Oh, there you go. That's clever.
Might be a little
Split it down the middle.
Want me to cut it? Yeah, but your angle's wrong. Ah, okay. That one's going to work.
Okay, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Slow it's growing?
Yes, it will.
Because remember the hormones?
the hormones are going to be...
Yeah, like
So when you espalier a
it
tree,
drops by gravity, the hormone. So straight down goes fast. You put it on an angle and it slows the rate of flow.
Your hormones are jumping.
Okay. There we go.
So we don't want this branch growing relative to the other ones. So we're gonna leave that. Well, actually I'm just gonna
Give it a little help. Okay.
single leader instead of 4.
Now, James, we have 2 here that are being overtaken. What can we do here to increase the vigor?
Cut back to a strong branch or a strong bud.
Okay, both of
there.
them. Is that counterintuitive? You're all going, why? Well, I'll tell you. When, in the early days,
Take off
When-
the next bud.
yeah, in the early days, when most fruit trees were sold with one single whip, they would often prune them and people go, oh, like why? I'm paying whatever, $39 for this and you just cut off 15 of it. So, but there's a reason why you do that. And because in the midpoint of what grew last year are the buds that are the strongest growing. Remember I showed you those illustrations where, if you leave the apical bud, you'll get some extension growth and those side buds, the first 3 are going to grow a little bit. If you cut that off, then you'll get more growth from that end where you cut off of the terminal bud. And then you go down to the middle of the thing, and those buds, because there's no longer any of, there's no auxin production in those buds above there, have been let free and they're going yoo-hoo, and they grow like crazy. So those ones are the ones that you want to cut back to when you want to invigorate the tree big time. Does that make sense, or have I lost you?
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of times when people prune, you know, they prune back in what grew last year, and they go, well, you know, I'm not going to cut it all off, but I'll cut off, you know, maybe half of it. And they're cutting back into exactly that spot where the most vigorous buds are. And what happens is that where they had one, now they have 3 really vigorous branches. So it's a great way if you've got a shrub that you want to turn into a hedge to make it a hedge. But if you want to actually grow a tree that is going to maintain the grace of the tree, you know, be open and have those open limbs, then you don't lop off those ends back to the midpoint, unless this is what you're trying to do. And you take advantage of that particular physiological growth, you know, how the plant grows, to make it grow. Because we want these guys to start growing so that they get their share of the nutrients. Because if they don't, if we don't get them growing, they're going to get really weak and they're done. And we'll have lost them. Okay?
Do you want to bring up these?
Oh, the covers right there. Okay. Oh, and here we have, right down here, we have the graft union. Sometimes called like this, you can call it the bud union, the graft, whatever, the dog leg. And this is where you have your rootstock, which has control over how the top is going to grow. And usually with these combination trees, they're put on a dwarfing rootstock. And the reason for that is that then they're not as vigorous growing, so it's a little easier to keep them under control and keep them in balance. If they were put on a standard rootstock, I think it would be just crazy. So they're usually on a dwarfing rootstock. Now this being placed about 4 inches above soil level is perfect, because then the scion, this interstem right here that these others were grafted to, is not going to overtake, so it's not going to become a standard tree. And when it's winter, because critters around here, we are at the high point of a vole explosion, and honestly they are so bad this year. If they hadn't put these on, you know how these go, right? They go around the tree, and then in the spring, I took it off, but you know, you start here and you work your way down, put it around. You want to put this on here for 2 reasons. One is that this is a pear, and it's not as critical usually with pears as it is with members of the prunus family, which are the stone fruits. But in the winter, when the ground is frozen and there's no way for moisture to go up the tree, if we get a really nice sunny day, like, you know, this is your southeast aspect right here. So in the winter, when we get a nice sunny day, the sun's going to be a lot lower, but it will still warm the bark. So what happens is it thaws. And then there's no way for that moisture to be replaced, so you get a big crack down here. And people would come in spring all the time and they'd say, I got a crack on my fruit tree, what do I do? And I'm going, is it on the southwest side? And you go, and you can see the gears going, yeah, how did you know? Well, because it's really common. This happens. So because this is white, you can prevent that happening. The other thing is those miserable voles, they will, honestly, this is tough. There we go. They like chewing all the way around. And if they go all the way around, the tree has girdled. There's no cambium left for the nutrients to go up. So it's a matter of time before the tree dies. If you have part of it that's still alive, if there's more of it, better. But sometimes, you know, if it's really important and you don't have much of the bark left, you can actually do a little bit of a bridge graft where you take a branch and you put it into the lower section over top of the part that was girdled where all the bark was removed, and then stick it into the top section. But, you know, that's kind of fun to do, but it might not be for everyone. So using these prevents that necessity. Definitely worth doing.
Do you take them off in the spring then?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Because they grow, you know, the plant grows. And with them being like this, they will grow with it. But you can also have moisture build up underneath, and then you can set them up for fungal issues. So you take them
Also, this is a pear, And to combat plum curculio, which
Yes.
is a
Have you ever had a pear that has really hard spots in it
Yeah.
and then really misshapen? Okay, that is a plum curculio, which is a type of weevil. And they're hard-bodied and they've got a big snout. And what they do is they hide in the ground.
soil.
Yeah, they're in the soil. And they crawl up the tree when the small fruitlets are just after the flowers have been pollinated in the spring. And they suck moisture out. And then, they don't even do a whole lot more, but you're left with this hard spot, and then the fruit grows around it, and you get this horribly misshapen fruit that is not pleasant to eat if it's got all these hard grainy things in it. So what you do is, there's a product called Tanglefoot, and it's not expensive. You'll have it, probably the rest of your gardening life. What you can do is you wrap you can get
comes
stuff.
with paper.
It comes with paper that you can put around there as tightly as possible. It's not going to hurt to take a staple gun and staple it to it, and then you paint the Tanglefoot on it. You don't put it directly on the bark because it is an oil. It's exclusive, like air excluding, so you don't paint it right on the bark. And then when they are ready to, hit their mark on the tree, they're stuck in it. When you apply it, use a popsicle stick. Something that you can dispose of, because this is not something that you clean off a night. It is really difficult to get rid of. Yes.
Can you use this on an old established pear tree too?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when do you take it off?
You can leave it anytime. You can leave it the whole season.
Oh, really?
You might want to put another one on the next year,
Okay.
just so that you're starting a fresh year. But if you can, they're gonna die on there. So you can get pretty good control of the population if you're doing this over a few years. So yeah.
So ants will catch ants as well? Or
Absolutely.
aphids, like all those kind of things.
Yeah. And the thing that if ants are an issue with any of your fruit trees, usually what they're doing is they're going after aphids. So if you see ants, you look for aphids because they farm the aphids. They like the honeydew, the sugar that the aphids, their waste that they produce when they're sucking on the leaves. So anyway, take care of the aphids and you'll probably get rid of the ants too. But yes,
Spread or branch, how long would you leave that on? Just one season?
one season. Yeah. And that's a good point because here we have these on these trees right here. And the city employees and a lot of landscapers love using them with every tree that they put in. Sometimes they're a really good option because if you've got a lot of people around there like this, you're going to have a lot of people in here. Somebody comes along, they decide that, oh, that would be fun. Let's just see how far this bends. Crap. You might want to leave them in place, but you actually only want to leave it for 1 year. Because if you leave it any longer, you end up weakening the trunk. Because the movement, how many of you grow tomatoes? Okay, if you grow them inside, have you ever heard that you take and, you kind of put your hand over it and, okay, what you're trying to do is replicate the action that you get with wind. And it strengthens the cell walls so you get stronger plants. Same thing here. What's that?
Could use a fan.
Over the tomatoes, that's what we use,
Yeah. But what you want to do here is make sure that this tree is going to be really strong in the future. So you really only want to leave the support for a year. It would be like, having a cast on. Once your leg has healed, the break is healed, it comes off. You don't keep it on.
On dwarf apple trees, you do have to stake them permanently.
Yes, but that's a little differently.
It is.
It is different. So dwarfing rootstocks, one of the reasons that they are dwarfing is because they tend to be smaller. So you've got a smaller root, which makes a smaller tree. And because it's not well anchored, because it's small, they need something to lean onto. So that's why in commercial orchards you'll see that they're grown on wire or they're grown on posts. So lots of times at the garden centers they don't tell you that you need something to grow them on. So the ideal thing to do here would be to put in a post, a treated post, or a metal post, and then just tie your tree to it in one or two places. Okay? Good point, James. All right. What else can we look at?
Just one final comment on this. this branch is equal in diameter to this one. If any side branches off the center stem are half the diameter of this, or 2/3 of the diameter of that, they have to come off. They need to be taken off and replaced. If this doesn't grow significantly and bulk up this year, and this one stays equal or larger than this, then it's going to have some drastic attention next year. Okay, because that is not appropriate.
Yeah. So that's another one of those rules to keep in mind, that whatever size your trunk is, your side branches should be a half the size or less, going all the way through, and anything that's coming off of it, the half the size or less than what it's coming off of. So, you know, that one, I forgot to mention it, so thank you for bringing that up. See, that's why we're both here.
Yeah. We're so lucky.
I'm so lucky.
So it is 3. If anybody absolutely had to go, if you have final questions, otherwise let's just keep going.
Okay,
if you have
well,
time.
let's go find those raspberries first, because we've looked at some fruit trees and are commonly called everbearers now, which are actually fall bearers because they produce fruit in August and September, and they are pruned differently. So if you've got the ones that I would say are summer fruiting varieties, you have the primal canes, which are the canes when they grow. And then you have the flora canes, which are flower, are going to produce the flowers that'll give you your fruit. So once you have the first year, the July bearers are growing just the canes. The second year, they will produce fruit because they produce flowers, okay? So once you're into the system and you've had them for more than a year, they will have grown the first year, and the second year you'll get fruit. You pick that, and right after they have finished fruiting, you cut those out. So all of those,
Right at the base.
right to the base, as close to the base as you can. The more that you get, the harder it gets to get right down to the ground, but you go as close to the ground as you can. And what's going to happen is you're going to get a whole bunch more primal canes that are going to come up, and they will grow through the summer. Don't cut them off, because they're going to give you your fruit next year. And if you cut them off, you know, I was doing a different talk yesterday, and this came up, and somebody says, "Oh, I was told you had to cut them off," and I said, "Why would you do that? You're cutting off half your production."
I cut them, I know.
Oh, okay, Melanie. Yeah, 10 lashes with a wet
noodle. Every year I cut them.
Okay, so what you can do in order to maintain your production, if you don't have a trellis that you can take and tie them to, so that you're going to have the fruit or your canes going the entire length of your trellis and using them up, is you can take them and bend them over and tie them to themselves at the base. Or you can have a post and you can tie it to the post. And what you do there is you are actually changing the hormone value in those canes. So the fruit on the way down is going to be smaller than the fruit this way on the way up. And the biggest fruit is going to be right here at the top. But at least you're still getting fruit, right? You don't have that problem when you take it like this. If you can prune it along some kind of a trellis or a fence or something like that, then you are going to get good sized fruit the entire length. But in order to maintain and get as much fruit as you can, by bending over, even though some of it is small, you're still getting a really good amount of production. And that's the whole point of growing our own fruit, right? So you want to get as much as you can. Now, if it is a fall bearer, it is producing flora canes this year. So the primal canes are produced last year. No, the primal canes grow this year and they fruit all in the same year. So you cut them right back to soil level in the spring. Okay?
In the spring.
In the
But
spring.
you have to know if you have that variety.
Yeah. So you do it in the spring. I say in the spring. You can do it in the fall if you want to. But the problem is if you have blackberries, which are not as hardy as raspberries, and you cut them off in the fall, you're going to have, my experience is that by pruning them in the fall, I had a lot more dieback than I did than if I left them and cut them back in the spring. So I would just say do it in the spring, and that way you've got it covered, so that you're not getting dieback. Yes.
Blackberry.
Yes.
You cut them back to the ground in the spring?
Yes. Yes, because any of the new growth that you got last year, it kind of comes down to the 4Ds, because that stuff that you grew last year, okay, all that new stuff, it will fruit, but anything that fruited last year has to come out, because it, diseases and stuff over winter, and the fruit will be inferior the second year. You do want to keep those, but because they're not as hardy, oftentimes there's a lot of dieback with them. So I would say keep what you can if it's 1-year-old wood, but otherwise you can grow your new-year-old wood and it's still going to fruit for you. Okay?
What about the canes that are so big, 6, 10, What do you do with those? Okay.
Yes. What, on a blackberry?
No, on a
raspberry? Yeah. You take and you
you
turn
do
them
that.
down. Yes. Because, okay. Do I
Because the
give you
wind
permission
blew
to come up?
and broke some, and
Yeah, no, if you tie them down, or tie them, it might be time to have something that you can tie them
I
to.
do have that.
Okay.
But they were above that. They're so far, my ties are here.
Okay.
They're up there.
All right, but what you're saying is that you're taking them to this point and then cutting them off.
Yeah, I'm
what
taking
you
it
can
4 feet,
do
5
is you can take them and grow them along the top. Okay? That way you don't have to cut that off. You just take it and bend it over here.
Oh, okay.
And because you've
So
got the
have
structure.
something stronger than I got a rope
Okay. Yeah, you might want to change that to wire.
to wire.
Yeah.
Okay.
And stretch it taut. And I
Yeah.
think it should be okay. Okay, so our time is coming to an end. Does anybody have any questions? I think we covered a bunch of things over there. There was a peach tree that I thought might be fun to show you, but it is dead. So there's no way to rejuvenate it. So, but the one thing over there that we could show you would be 2 honeycrisp trees. They're really nice trees. They were only planted last year. James, should we do some pruning on those honeycrisp because they want to invigorate them?
A word about honeycrisp. If you let honeycrisp fruit, it will stunt their growth. Like, it doesn't matter what you will do, they're not gonna grow. So you have to get the tree to the size you want first before you allow fruit. So in the orchard, we don't let trees fruit for 4 years at least.
Now, I'm going to put in a little plug. This man and his brother had the best honeycrisp in BC for several years running. He knows what he's talking about. Okay.
Because our packing house ranks its growth.
Yes. We even got little certificates.
They are good apples.
You're into a situation like this, where that's where your growth will, true growth will occur. Allow the top one to go, if that's what you want, and break off the next 3 as they're growing. Then you will get down into here, see it here, take crotch angle, nice, flat crotch angle. Don't allow these to grow at all. That forces those to grow out at a flatter crotch angle. Stronger, it will hold the fruit, and you won't have a problem. So, anyway, we want these done right.
Yes. Yes, please.
Oh, here we go.
Really,
What about this down here that it's growing out? Is that okay?
see these small
Yeah.
shoots?
Yeah.
These branches are the ones that are going to carry your fruit.
Yes.
You want to have them.
Right.
You can just you can make them a little stronger. We're going to call for growth on these. This is a terminal bud here. It produces that hormone to suppress shoot growth. This is the fruit spur here and here. they produce the hormone as well. So if I cut back to there, I won't get a growth response because the hormone is still present, suppressing shoot growth. That's okay. In actual fact, because I've got this, how big do you want these trees?
Their purpose is to produce shade in this garden because as we get so much sun, it's really hot here.
So if we want them a little larger, we've got too many branches here.
Now there was something too that Harriet was saying that in every picture for pruning, the pruners are in the wrong direction. So Harriet was saying the base.
Did you notice that as I'm pruning? Did you see me switching hands? It comes automatically because what I'm doing is getting the cutting blade to go the direction it's after. And I do it automatically. I don't even think about it. It's just muscle memory. But you want the hook into the crotch and you pull up into it.
That's awesome.
So I've heard that you're supposed to disinfect your pruners between trees.
Between trees?
Because of fungal?
If you've got a lot of disease, then yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not a lot of disease on these. We want some growth. So I am taking off some terminal buds where I want growth.
I'm going to be coming by and checking on the trees.
We want you to come by.
Yes,
Welcome to come by.
that's right.
We want far more people interacting
Come
with this
help.
garden.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I kind of just noticed it, and I guess because I'm just into now, you know, with the Bucker fields and yeah. So yes.
That, I think, is pretty much all I will.
Because that's about a third, right?
Yeah.
Would you, if you that was your tree, would you take those leaves off?
Nope.
No, just those ones you wouldn't take them off. Those ones
They
just
fall off.
Oh, okay.
The wind will blow them off.
Yeah.
Well, you're a home gardener. You got time to do that. Yeah, exactly. You know what?
It's not gonna hurt
Take
them.
a look at those leaves.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
are full of apple scabs.
Oh, scared.
Oh,
All of those,
yeah.
those
Spots?
spots
Well, you can see like
are apple scabs.
So would you spray that with a dormant spray then?
No, dormant spray is not a fungicide.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Dormant spray is a bug. Oil is
But
a-
then,
is
does
a
that
bug.
mean though that all of these leaves really should be cleaned up? Yeah.
Yep, if you're gonna go organic, all of those leaves should be cleaned up. Or the other option is to take some 20-20-20 and spray them, and that will cause them to rot faster. And hopefully they rot before asclospore release in the spring. So once we have shoot growth, like half-inch green or whatever, if we get a rainfall that is 24 hours long or 36 hours long, and the temperature is between 12 and 15 degrees Celsius, it causes the spores that are on those leaves and in the ground to grow and rupture, and they explode out fungus, apple scab, and start an infection on the tree. Anyway, so yeah, it's a good idea to clean up
Probably
this
take
stuff.
them out, yeah.
Take it all off and clean them out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
did you used to do your trees with the winter spray? in
With
the winter?
dormant oil?
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about that.
Okay,
Because
good.
it's not a winter spray.
Okay.
So, you know, if you listen to Brian Minter, and I love Brian Minter, but he's telling people to put dormant oil spray on in February, no, we're not Chilliwack. So, what we have to wait for, what you want to do when you put on your dormant spray, is you want to get the best kill off of insect masses that are on your tree, okay? So the whole tree has to be covered. The way that the dormant oil works is through smothering. If you put it on in February, we're going to have snow, we're going to have rain, the dormant oil will be long gone before those egg masses are starting to hatch. You have wasted your money and your time. What you want to do is you want to wait until you get the green. Like these buds are starting to grow and up to ½ inch green. Okay?
Well, big cluster.
Or even tight cluster. Yeah, when you're getting, it's opening up a little bit and the flowers, you can see them, but they're still really tight. If you do that at that stage, it's warm enough that those egg masses are hatching, and then you're going to get really good suffocation. Which is what, you know, it sounds mean, but I mean, that's the reason we're doing it.
Yeah.
And it's the cheapest thing you can do. And if you're not doing it, you know, really, the rest of it, you're playing catch up. Because you can save yourself a lot of trouble in your home orchard by doing the dormant spray. Now, there are some things that you use the lime sulfur with. Apples aren't one of them. So you can use lime sulfur earlier than what I just indicated to put it on, because it will work on Persilla, and Persilla it hatches really early. So you can put dormant oil and lime sulfur on your pear trees now. Otherwise, you're going to wait a few weeks until you get to ½ inch or tight cluster of the flowers before you put it on. That's for all your other fruit trees. Also works really well on roses too. You know, and even your small, pardon me?
My wife would be concerned about her bees.
No, it's not going to do anything. If you are concerned, if you have bees around, because there are no blossoms at this point, right? So if you do have bees around, then wait until later in the day when they're not flying to put it on. But I don't think it would be an issue. So anyway, what was I going to say?
So you were saying the pear, you'd put some sulfur in that, and you could do that now.
Yes.
But the apple, is that the apple too?
No,
Okay.
because you don't want to use the sulfur, the lime sulfur, because it's a really good miticide. It kills off all the mites, but it kills off the good guys as well.
Yeah.
So, and you know, when you're aiming for trying to grow things naturally or in organic fashion, then you want the predators to look after the bad guys.
Yeah.
So you don't want to kill off the good guys. And you do if you use the lime sulfur. So you just use the oil. And you can also take the oil, it comes in a kit. And if you take the page off the front and you look at it, you'll read that there's a dormant rate and there's a summer rate, a growing season rate. It's really good to use on insects and stuff like that during the summer as well, but you have to use it at the summer rate, at a lighter rate. And again, it's working through suffocation, but you don't want to suffocate the leaves. That's why you don't use the dormant rate. But when you're putting it on in late spring at ½ inch green or a tight cluster, then you do use the dormant rate, but basically just use the oil.
Is it a neem oil or what is it?
It's not. It's a petroleum product, but it's a very clean one. And they used to be really, really heavy, and now it's a very light oil compared to what they used to use. So I don't think that the vegetable oils work to the same degree as the petroleum type at this point. So they're still petroleum based.
So can you use the dormant oil on all fruit trees then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But you don't want to use the lime sulfur. You never want to use lime sulfur on apricots.
No.
You can actually kill them off. One of the, one year we had ordered apricot trees from Bylands, but in the fall somebody had put lime sulfur on the trees and basically killed off all their apricot trees. And so there were none to be had that year. Anyway, interesting, yeah.
We do have the Saskatoon if you want to just treat it like a
A
fruiting
blueberry or
bush.
anything? Yeah, which one?
Right there.
So my question is, when you get apples and they have that horrible sticky, some of the apples now have that clothing moss.
Okay, no, sometimes, no,
Like
what
you have
that
to
is.
wash it off and you can't get it off. It's like a sticky.
Well, yeah, if it's sticky.
That's not that.
No, it's not. It's
Not the oil.
actually perfectly natural. So what this plant, what the apple is doing,
Yeah.
apples produce their own wax.
Okay.
And that wax is produced to keep it from drying out. It wants, the whole reason that the apple has had a fruit is to make sure that the seeds are there for, mice and birds and stuff to pick up to perpetuate the species. So anyway, in order to keep that apple in as good a shape as long as possible, this wax is produced. Now when you're a grower and you ship them off, what happens is they go through a water bath because there's no soap in it. They just get put through this to keep them from pounding each other so they don't get all bruised while they're being sorted for, looking for blemishes, bruises, color, all that sort of thing. So at that point, a lot of the natural wax has been removed. So then they have to be waxed in order to make them so that they don't dry out. So your apples are going to last for a while. They are usually a carnauba wax. Okay? It's an organic wax. Okay. It should not hurt you unless you have allergies to nuts. Then you might find that it bothers the inside of your mouth or your throat or something like that. If you find it annoying, then cut it off. But there's a lot of nutrient value and fiber value in the skin, so leave it. But a lot of the old-fashioned varieties they can grow, they make a lot of their own wax. And a lot of them are not commercial varieties. They don't go through the packing house. So then they have this wax on there and it gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Like galas tend to get really thick wax. Also, that's my favorite. Wash it off with soap and water. Soap.
Not vinegar?
No. You can use baking soda.
Okay,
Baking soda will work.
Okay.
Yeah, but soap and water will break it down really quickly and then just rinse it really well. And then you can use it. Okay? Another crocus, yay! That one. Okay, so that aronia also it's really bitter. Yeah. And lemons, Anyway, we've got enough, we have enough canes on this that we can do some pruning with it this year. And what you're doing with this is you're doing the 4Ds. And with the 4Ds, I would include within that weak and wimpy. Okay, so we're taking out weak and wimpy. We've got some crossing branches. Dinky. Yeah. Anything that's growing into the middle, take it out because it's going to cross over. So anyway, now that most of that is taken care of,
The way they designed
now,
here is wrong.
yeah, I know. Oh, and I was doing it wrong, wasn't I? Oh, and of course he would say it. Yeah, he could have saved that for later. Yeah.
Anything you can get on her nerves.
Do you know what?
Pruning shear designers do not go into the orchard. They do not talk to horticulturalists to design their stupid Velcro shears and all the rest.
Or any other shear.
Correctly.
Yeah.
They're all designed so you cut the wrong way.
So what it should be doing is this is your hook and this is your cutting surface. So your hook should always be catching what you want to, bring it down to cut it. And then this is cutting the direction that the sap is going. So you're basically going up, but yeah.
They're all designed
To cut and if you ever look at pictures, almost all of them are with them going like this. Yes, yeah. So your cutting blade should be at the bottom and cutting with the direction of the sap. All right, so what I'm going to do here, what's that? Yes.
for the demonstration.
Yeah,
Need
okay,
it.
because James is here and he would always tell me, right? So I've got something here that's a crossing branch. This is a newer one, so it's a healthier one. So I'm going to take out this one because it's crossing. Then this is an older one because you see how this has no side branches? These ones, when they have side branches, you can tell that they're a little bit older because they don't develop in the first year. I don't want to get rid of everything, but again, this is going to cross over. This is really low. This one is weak and wimpy. All right. And now, what am I left with? I think yeah, I'm tempted to take this out altogether just because of the fact that it is older, but I also want to have some fruit over here. So this is where you go from pruning as a science to pruning as an art, because, you know, there's a bit of both. And sometimes the science is just a little bit too brutal, and I'm going, no, I still want some fruit over there. So I am going to cut this out. And then I think the rest can probably stay there. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that.
And what's going to fruit this year?
Everything in there. Because it fruits every year and it gets very overgrown. Now, if this were a blueberry and I had growth during the growing season, new growth, once it gets to about this high, I would take out the terminal bud at the top. And what happens is that forces these little side buds to grow. And those side buds are going to give you the fruit. Yeah, you take out the terminal bud. Yeah. So, anywho, that's that.
Awesome.
I think we've covered most of it.
Which is the terminal cut off.
Terminal means top.
When you cut it off properly, the branch that you throw away, you can look at this, and it's got cracks all the way across this surface. And even up into here, see the cracking? That's what happens when you cut this way. Instead of putting the cracks on the branch you're cutting off, all the cracks go into this one. On the tree. Water and disease go in the cracks. So if you cut this way, the cracks go on the branch that you throw away, and this is a cleaner cut. No cracking on that surface.
You'd think the tool manufacturers would have figured that out, wouldn't you?
You would think so, but they haven't.
I don't know what happened. So the videos aren't showing right now. However, we do have it on our Facebook page if you use Facebook, or it actually, because our Facebook feed feeds into our website, it is on the front. And you can watch it right on our website, which is shoeshopfood.ca. So you can watch the pruning principles video. I'm going to watch it a few times, and like
Just
that will really help
remember-
understand the biology.
Yeah, just remember that I messed up the one slide that I corrected with your handout today, okay? Because I had the angles wrong on the tree. So I made a new diagram of how the lower limbs should be the thickest and at the strongest angle, and then they get flatter and not as heavy as you go up. Shows much better in this diagram. It also has the angles corrected, and the explanation is on the other side. And I hope that you can figure it all out from there. Okay?